I got a outreach from Jonah and asking me if I wanted to be a part of this. When I joined, only Tony was involved at that point, and they sent me. Well, first Jonah and I spoke. We Skyped, and then he sent me a script, which I read, and we Skyped a bit more, and I talked through a glass darkly about this character because there was so much more going on than was evident, obviously, in the first script. But what I saw in the script was really incredibly well crafted architecture of the storytelling, and the balance and the ways in which this premise, this construct, was being developed, of this park and these hosts who were going through their daily kind of groundhog day type days, and the way that they had kind of shaped just that first script was really kind of indicative of a real vision, and also a great skill. And that's really what I look for in scripts. Oddly, is the script, is the writing. And so that captured me. And then it seemed to me that there was a lot to explore with Bernard as this kind of everyman, at the center of both of these worlds, kind of balancing both sides, and that he was head of the programming but also had implications, obviously, for the behavior in the park. And so he seemed that he would be at the center of things, and very much as like kind of a detective leading the audience through, was the way I saw it. I said, yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'll buy into this. I'll come on board. And Jonah's obviously incredibly impressive, as well as Lisa Joy, his wife, and JJ, of course. And had a long history of HBO, but I had no idea what was coming until we started to shoot the second episode. When we shot the pilot, we came back to start the season in full, and then Lisa called me into her office and dropped the robot bomb on my head that, I knew a few things. I knew, Bernard's, I knew his secret, and I also, because I had to understand why that was, I knew that, there was this additional duality to Bernard, in that he was kind of a recreation of one of the originators of the park. And so but I didn't know how we were going to get there. And it's really probably best not to try to get ahead of Jonah and Lisa, because they're always way ahead of the game. But it was a really fun ride. And so last year I knew a bit more than most other folks in the cast. This year I probably knew less going in. We do what we do. It was just more out of. It did have to do. It parallels in some ways what's going on with Bernard in the second season, in that he's having shot himself in the head at the end of the last season, or toward the end of the last season, the first season. He's got some health issues, as you would expect, after lodging a bullet in the head. Yeah. So he's got some cognitive challenges, as we enter the first episode of season 2, and he's got some additional, challenges that come up as we go on board, in terms of his being able to process. And so that was part of it. It's also because things change quite a bit with our show as the season goes on, and as the writing evolves, and as things are shot. They grab onto ideas that previously weren't there. They shape ideas, and it's really exciting in that way. It kind of pulls just to watch them work, because what's one of the best aspects of working on a long form drama is you sense this kind of communication between the performance and the writer. So as you're doing, then they get ideas. Well, maybe we could shape this in that way, or maybe we could explore having your character go in this direction. Whereas we thought it was going to go in another direction, they also get a deeper sense of the story that they're telling once they see the first couple of episodes. So that tends to change things. So they don't like to get too far ahead of themselves, even in revealing too much, because often things change and people go like, "Wait, what happened to that scene? I love that scene. That was awesome." That was so I think it's just a function of the complexity to some extent. And also, you have to remember that there's no source material for our show. This is all coming out of the deep crevasses of Jonah Nolan's and Lisa Joy's head, collective head, So their marital head is giving birth to this stuff. So it ain't so easy. Bernard is he's in a pretty peculiar, kind of unique position in that he's got kind of certain allegiances to both sides, and I think that's part of the consideration for him. I think given his robot brain situation, and given kind of the social situation around him in terms of having been human and discovering that he's a host but aspiring toward a kind of awakening as the hosts are. I think the question for him at the beginning, as you might expect, let's just stick with him, is, where am I? And where am I in all of this? And so I think we lead from there.